So Rabbi Yitz Frank, our Ohio director, has some good news to share. You just got back from the State House. Tell us what is going on with the Ohio budget and how this affects Ohio parents.
Good morning, AD. So we've been working on the Ohio State budget for actively for about 4 or 5 months, but really probably about 16 or 17 months. And we are at the point where the Senate's released their version of the budget bill. And we were very successful so far in getting a number of priorities included. One of the most important priorities is in continuing to empower parents to choose schools of their choice via the EdChoice Scholarship Program. We were successful in advocating that the Senate should increase those scholarship amounts by about 25%. So for a family that has a student in kindergarten through 8th grade, right now that scholarship provides about $4,650. That number would go up to $5,500. And at the high school level, it would go from $6,000 to $7,500. It's very difficult to raise the values of these scholarships for a lot of different reasons. But the reality is the last time we were able to increase this scholarship was about 6 years ago. And prior to that, it was almost a decade. So these increases were long overdue, and I think will be very powerful in terms of both improving the educational environment in the state, but also empowering the families within our community to choose schools that work for their children.
Oh, that's amazing, because I know there are thousands of parents who are sending their children to Jewish day schools in Ohio who are already on the program, and now they will be able to get, you're saying, a higher scholarship amount this summer, meaning if this bill passes, does that mean this summer they're getting, if there's 100 kids in a school getting scholarships, that's $100,000 more, at least $100,000 more for those parents?
The plan is for it to be in effect for this coming school year. So obviously we're going to have to work on this issue over the next month, and the House is definitely going to have an opportunity to weigh in, and there'll be a conference committee, and certainly the governor's opinion matters on that. But obviously the Senate's a really big step, and we're hopeful that the majority in the House agrees with those overdue changes.
Now, one of the problems that have been over the years is that one of the ways the program works is that if you're assigned to a school that's underperforming and it's on a specific list, a public school that's underperforming, then the parents who would be sending their child to that school or did send their child to that school can get a scholarship. One of the problems that parents have come to us over the years is that there's concern about the future. So if a school, which has happened before, closes, merges, does a tiny bit better on a couple tests here and there, and all of a sudden they get a little better. So even though they moved their 2nd grader and their 5th grader to this private school, but now they have a 4-year-old, they could be shut out of the program because the school they're assigned to is no longer on that list. What's the good news on that front?
So that's a really good question. And actually there are a few points really related to that. Number one, you're absolutely right. I mean, the schools that qualify for EdChoice, meaning the public schools that qualify, can vary by the year. And we made a number of reforms to that program late in 2020. But importantly, you're right. There are sometimes schools come off that list, and you might have a situation where a family has a student that is eligible for an EdChoice scholarship, and they're able to then take that scholarship and choose a school. But they might have a younger child that, for whatever the reason is, doesn't qualify. And we don't think that's fair, because we want families to, if they want, to be able to keep their kids together in the same school. So one of the amendments that the Senate is supporting and including in their budget is to allow siblings of EdChoice scholars to automatically be eligible. And we think that's a really good policy. The other issue related to that, and I think this is important because oftentimes school choice can be portrayed as like a zero-sum game, like a public school versus private school thing. And it's not really about that, right? This is about empowering families. And frankly, almost all of the research, certainly all of the gold standard studies, if you will, indicate that school choice programs actually improve education in the public sector as well. But one of the sort of valid criticisms is that sometimes when parents choose to leave their public school districts, sometimes that can take money with them. And that can create an unfortunate division. So one of the really important reforms that we played a really strong role in advocating for is to have the state fund choice programs directly. And we're very happy that the Senate did that. The House actually is in agreement on that, although the Senate's language is a little bit better, because I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but the House's language sort of left the program open to a potential line item veto where the governor could strike it out with his pen. Again, we're not worried about a Governor DeWine, but maybe a future governor. But that's a really important issue.
When I in the years before, when I was the Ohio director, that actually did happen. A governor did try to line item veto the entire program.
So in fact, AD, one of the reasons why we've had to work so hard to increase the scholarship amounts is because what he did line item veto was the automatic escalator, which is why it's taken us so long to raise those scholarship amounts. And that's another important thing. We actually also reinstate the indexing of the scholarship amounts to the funding that we spend on traditional public and charter school students as well. So hopefully, we won't actually have to fight for additional increases. They should happen automatically as inflation, which is inevitable, continues.
Wow, and there's I heard there's a new program, completely new program. I already has five scholarship programs. We're now going to have a sixth.
We may have a sixth. So the Senate included in their version, they actually included 3 different types of tax credits. Let me just focus on one. Many states have a version of school choice that is funded by tax credits. What's being proposed in Ohio is that, let's say A.D. Mutson says, you know what, I would really like to donate money to help disadvantaged students attend a private school of their choice. You could go and write up to $1,000 check to a scholarship granting organization, it's called, and you would receive a dollar-for-dollar tax credit against your state tax liability at the end of the year. So this could be a really powerful tool to not only provide more scholarships to more students. Some of them may already participate in EdChoice. Some of them may not qualify for whatever the reason is. But also, more importantly, it's also a tool for nonprofit organizations to engage donors in their work and get involved in some of the important issues that they work on at no actual cost to that donor.
Right. We've seen and I work in a lot of states, and there's scholarship tax credit programs in many states, overall hundreds of millions of dollars in different states and different programs. And one of the things it does is actually it has made businesses much more engaged in education and in funding scholarships. It doesn't cost them, it's a dollar-for-dollar tax credit, doesn't cost them money, or even in case where it's less than that in some states. It has helped businesses get involved and individuals to really give back to children in their cities and states that they want them to get the best education that fits their needs. So that's amazing news. Anything else in there that parents should know about that is in the Senate package?
There are a lot of smaller provisions that are important that we worked on. I think by my count, upwards of 30. Some of them relatively minor changes, but some of them really important, including issues related to the EdChoice Scholarship Program. We make changes to strengthen public transportation to day schools, which has been an issue in some areas this year.
So Ohio buses children to schools?
Ohio is required by state law to bus all students to the school of their choice. We did include the governor included language that strengthens the requirement to do that. And then in addition, what the Senate's proposing is to sort of disincent. There is a mechanism within state law, and this is not unreasonable, that if a district feels it's impractical to transport a student for a particular reason, that they have the ability to opt out of that and provide what's called payment in lieu of transportation, which is a payment to parents saying, hey, I know we're supposed to bus your child. We can't for whatever the reason. Well, here's a check for $250. Well, we don't think that's fair, because $250 is not close to the cost of transporting a child. And we also wanted to create sort of a little bit of a disincentive, which can happen sometimes, where districts have, for whatever the reason is, might have a incentive to make that declaration. So what was included in the Senate's version of the budget is that if a district declares impracticality, they owe the parent the lesser of 50% of the calculated cost of ridership, or $2,500, whichever one is less. Now, the goal here is ideally, we don't want any district to have to write that check. We want the transportation law to be implemented with fidelity, and we think that this is a good way to incent that kind of behavior.
That makes sense. Anything else? I know there was a long list of accomplishments, and really kudos to you. I know you worked very closely together with other allies that share our priorities, and working with Senate leaders to get this. No one does this alone, but definitely you testified for many of these issues, and I know you worked very closely with a lot of the Senate leaders. So on behalf, as an Ohio parent myself, thank you.
No, my pleasure. And there's another really important thing, which I think parents probably won't be able to recognize as much, but it's really important to both the schools themselves and ultimately in the education that the students receive, which is there's and this has existed for decades, but Ohio, and one of the issues that we actually work on pretty hard is Ohio has a program called Auxiliary Services Program, which provides at this point about $1,000 per student to support things like special ed services, textbooks, technology, security, and things like that. Now, that money previously did not go directly to non-public schools. It was held by the school district, and the school would work with the district to sort of procure the services to benefit the students. So again, this is not something that parents would see, but obviously very important to the educational product. And frankly, if that program didn't exist, it's very likely that tuition would be higher, commensurate to that amount. One of the changes we're really excited about is in light of the Espinoza Supreme Court case that was decided last June, which I believe Aguda has been involved with, at least in submitting amicus briefs, is that it allows now, at least in our opinion, the law would now allow those funds to be transmitted directly to the non-public schools. Again, it's still limited on those services, but because there's less entities involved in deciding how that money is spent, we actually think it's going to increase the value of those funds by almost 20%. So that's obviously a very exciting piece of news. And then there's another pot of funds also sort of similar that is a reimbursement for certain mandated services, which is about $400 per student, which is also included here. And the Senate actually removed a cap that artificially limited how much funds are actually sent to those students.
Wow. So Ohio is kind of unique in how much it supports parents to have choices. It has a robust charter school and public choice, but also it sounds like between the different scholarship programs and these other funding that Ohio really supports parents in choosing the school that best meets their needs.
Ohio does and has a long history of supporting parents specifically, but like any state, status quo is never good. You always have to be identifying ideas, programs to sort of keep invigorating the system. And this is not just the case for private schools. It's the case for the public school system, for charter schools, whatever it is. You just got to keep identifying more and more strategies to get parents involved, to get the communities involved, and ultimately, hopefully improve educational outcomes for students.
So on that note, so how can parents who hear all this great news and how can they help? Because this right now, as you said, is only a Senate and not even the full Senate yet has voted on this. So what can parents do, or what can community members do to make sure that these kind of policies actually become law by the end of the month?
So that's a really good question. So right now, obviously, the bill is pending in the Senate. We anticipate further changes, including some really good ones. I can't share what they are yet, that we hope to see on Tuesday, at which point the Senate Finance Committee should pass the bill out of committee, send it to the full Senate on Wednesday or Thursday, and vote. At that point, it's going to go to what's called a conference committee, which is going to be made up of 3 members of the House of Representatives and 3 members of the Senate. And obviously the governor has a strong voice in that process as well. It's going to be really crucial at that time to encourage your House members and frankly, your Senate members as well to keep our priority issues in this budget. So we are going to be developing, in fact, we may even share some of our partners' action alerts that will easily direct you to your senator, to your House member with some suggested messaging. But of course, you could use your own words as well. Tell them your own stories about why these issues matter to you. And that could be really, really impactful. So keep an eye out for that. And certainly if you know a member of the General Assembly and you're able to personally call them, of course, that would be enormously helpful as well. But even if you don't, emailing their office, calling them, is really crucial. and obviously, your support and involvement with Aguda at large is really helpful as well, because you are what makes us strong enough to be able to help influence some of the outcomes that our community really, really wants to see.
No, we really appreciate your advocacy. I know you've been spending a lot of time in Columbus, traveling back and forth to Cleveland, and we appreciate that, and I hope to hear good news in the weeks ahead.